Telecom Exchange in New York City. I'm joined by Barlow, attorney from Keener Law Group. Thanks for joining me.
Yep, I'm glad to be here.
So tell me what's going on in the white spaces arena these days.
Well, white spaces, as you know, is the FCC came together, and last year they issued an order which allowed all the TV spectrum that had been that white space where the TV stations are not, you turn the channel and see white space, to be unlicensed. Real similar to Wi-Fi. But because it's in the TV spectrum, you're able to get the radio signal can go much further. And so during the past year, they use a database that the radios have to talk to determine if they can be in channel 54 or 52 or 49. So if there's a TV station in channel 49, then that radio will pick channel 48. And so that's the database. And so the FCC started to approve database providers this year, and they are beginning to do trials. But one of the really interesting things that's happening in white spaces right now is that the Congress is trying to raise money. And this is a little bit complicated, but it's going to potentially wipe out white spaces and all that the FCC has done to make this unlicensed spectrum. So they want to raise money for the Treasury. And one way they can do that is they can take TV stations, which just moved a couple years ago for the digital TV, which everyone knows about, and they want to take those TV stations and they want to jam them together. So instead of a TV station having a 6 megahertz channel, they'll put 2 TV stations in that channel.
Okay.
And that will free up somewhere between 84 megahertz, and there's 6 megahertz per channel, so you can divide, and 120 megahertz, so that's 20 channels. It'll free up 20 channels. And what they want to do is sell those channels in an incentive auction. So that would raise, 120 channels would raise just about $28 billion.
Wow.
But it would all go to be licensed. There would be no unlicensed. And who's going to buy it? And white spaces would go away. So that bill has just come out of the committee in the Senate. It's a Rockefeller-Hutchison bill. And it may be put into the appropriation bill where it would make this process go forward.
How soon do you see this happening if that does go forward?
Well, this is a little more complicated, but all of this is driven by public safety, which wants to have a nationwide public network.
Okay.
And the D block was going to be auctioned about 2 years ago by the FCC, and they auctioned the A block, the B block, and the C block. Verizon bought one, and then Google bid on one, and then AT&T bought the other. The D block was meant to be for public safety, but the minimum bid was $1.3 billion, and it didn't get bid. And there were some other contingencies that caused it not to be successful. So there was money expected from that bid to be put in the Treasury, about $3 billion, between 1 and 3, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And they were going to have a private company build the network for public safety across the United States. So they're trying to do this process a little bit differently, so it would not be a private-public network. It would just be owned, the whole D block, owned by public safety, and part of that $28 billion that was raised, about $12 billion, would be used to build out a network for public safety.
Okay.
They want to do that by 9/11, the 10th anniversary of the 9/11. Because when they did 9/11, we're here in New York City today, the fire couldn't communicate with the police, and the police couldn't communicate with the federal government, and it was like a mess. And so many people died because of the lack of communication, and in 10 years, still nothing has happened.
Yeah, do you see that as a realistic goal? Doing it before 9/11?
I think they'll pass the legislation before 9/11. The chief of police of New York City is interested in it. Senator Rockefeller wants to see it pass. A lot of people from their gut want to see us move beyond this.
Right.
But I think that the better approach is to just re-auction the D block and go back to the private-public network, because what they're going to do is they're going to put a bunch of people together in government. They're going to run this network. They're going to build the network. I just don't see it happening very well.
Okay.
And then they're going to run the network, and that's going to cost billions of dollars, which they don't have. And I think a private-public partnership, which is already in the law and already ready to go, I think that should be revisited, not take away the white spaces.
Okay.
Just use the D block, which is already a set amount of spectrum. So you'd leave the TV stations where they are. They could create new broadband channels right now, the TV stations, with that 6 megahertz, but if they move, they won't be able to even compete. So you could create a lot of competitors, raise a lot of money, and take care of public safety, all by re-auctioning the D block.
Awesome. Well, on another quick note, we have Super Wi-Fi Summit happening in Austin this September, and you're going to be a part of that. Tell me a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, so White Spaces is very new, and it's called Super Wi-Fi, and we're putting a couple of maybe 5 or 6 panels together to talk about database providers, white space database providers, and the trials that are happening, and using white spaces for backhaul, cellular backhaul, and putting white spaces in the home, devices in the home, and smart grid. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening around white spaces. There are only 1 or 2 panels and conferences that are held around white spaces in the country and the world, really.
Yeah.
And this is going to be one of them in Austin. So we're looking forward to visiting with TMC in Austin.
As are we. Looking forward to having you there.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Once again,
Okay.
this is Barlow Keener from Keener Law Group.